Welcome to Healing Horizons with Saima, where wellness meets wisdom in every aspect of life. And today we are joined by our amazing guest Jennifer Edward, certified financial planner trademark and founder of Breakthrough Financial Wellness Consulting. Jennifer brings a fresh perspective on money, showing us that financial wellness isn't just about numbers, it's about awareness, mindset, and emotional clarity. And her 7-layer financial wellness framework trademark helps people uncover the deeper stories that drive their financial choices and transform stress into confidence. So, Jennifer, welcome to the show.
Hi, Seema. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're warmly welcome. And it's a pleasure to have you here, Jennifer. So, Jennifer, you have observed that even financially educated people, they struggle with money. So can you share that how does mindfulness change the way we approach finances?
Yes, well, it helps us to bring ourselves out of unconscious decision-making into conscious decision-making, which allows us to live our lives and make our financial decisions in alignment with our actual highest priorities and goals, and kind of dismiss the factors that drive most people's financial decisions, which is emotions, subconscious beliefs, also what they feel like they need to do to impress other people. And then that can lead to a lot of regret as they've spent their time and energy and money on things that aren't really important to them in the end.
That's really remarkable. And it's really, not just like knowing the numbers, but also about our mindset around them. So can you give an example of, how mindfulness has helped someone make a different financial choice?
Yeah, so I worked with a woman who came in to see me. She was she was very distraught because she had gotten herself into credit card debt and was going to do a debt consolidation loan. But this is the third time this had happened. And she was really like, why can't I control my spending? Why is it that every time I do a debt consolidation, I get those payments lowered so that they're manageable again? I go out and I max out my credit cards again, and I find myself in this same situation over and over again. And she was actually married to a surgeon, an orthopedic surgeon, who made plenty of money. On paper, it looked like they should not have any financial problems. But she had a deep-seated fear of getting help from her husband financially because of a divorce that had happened when she was around 10 years old. And we know that our financial belief systems are actually set in stone around 7 to 10 years old is when we form those. And so those had been carried into her adult life. And from the divorce, what had happened is her father continued to live very luxuriously. He had a lot of financial resources after the divorce. And her mother was kind of plunged into poverty. She didn't have job skills. She was moving from place to place. She had a lot of financial instability after that divorce. And so my client was ping-ponged, kind of between both of those worlds. And the message that her subconscious formed in that situation was never to depend on a man for money, never to accept help or money from your partner. And so her husband didn't even know about the debt. They kept their finances completely separate. I asked her how he would react, and she said she thought that he would be really kind about it, that he would listen and understand and probably just offer to pay it off, alleviating the financial burden altogether. But she just really couldn't do that until we brought those beliefs to the forefront of her mind. We uncovered what was really going on. And then she could, face that with full faculties, her full spiritual embodiment, her body, her mind, all of it could come into that situation to solve that problem. And then we could solve it correctly and get to the point where she wasn't going to do it again.
That's really a compelling example, Jennifer. It's fascinating, that how bringing awareness into something as routine as financial decisions can create such a ripple effect. And it really highlights that even that being mindful isn't just about avoiding mistakes. It's about actively choosing actions that align with our, bigger goals and values. And that perspective completely shifts how we think about money, like turning it from a source of stress into a tool for intentional relieving, right?
Mm-hmm. Most people don't understand how much what money really is it's kind of this amplifier of what is already who you are. So, if you're insecure about how you are perceived by other people, you're going to see that in the way that you spend your money, the way that you spend your resources to try to get that approval from other people. If you're already very secure in who you are, a great example of this is the very famous investor Warren Buffett, who he enjoyed the process of investing. He would research companies, he would buy into these companies, and that was just something that he enjoyed doing, but it never really changed who he was, because at his core, it wasn't about the status of having a bunch of money. It was this challenge about, learning about investing and how to be successful in it. He liked testing himself to see if he could, figure out how to make this work, and then, turned into billionaire.
That's really eye-opening, Jennifer. Now, your framework considers cultural, familial, and physiological layers. So, which layer do people often overlook, and why is it so important?
So let me run through all 7 so you can, and I really hope that your listeners will take a moment after they hear all the 7 layers and think, okay, what is intuitively, again, our higher selves, our spiritual being that's inside of us to guide us? What's the very first one that kind of strikes you as being, that's where my financial hangup lies? So hopefully they'll take some time to do that. So the top layer is societal, which are those systemic forces that impact our ability to be successful with money, over which we have very little control. So in here would be things like racism and sexism, gender wage gap, sometimes the political situation of the country in which you live, all those kinds of opportunities that you are either not afforded or are afforded. The systems are not set up to have everybody succeed equally. And once we acknowledge that and accept that, we can say, okay, what do we have control over? And we can stop feeling the shame around that, which is another aspect of that societal level. It keeps us isolated, feeling like we're the only ones, we're the only part of the problem. And that's just not true. So there's the societal layer. And then next is relational, meaning like our family systems, our romantic partners, maybe our family of origin or extended family, because none of us are making financial decisions in isolation. We're all connected. If I decide not to go on a big family trip, that has an impact on my family, even though I'm saying this is the right thing for me to do financially. Or you might have a spender and a saver in a relationship, and the saver wants to put more toward future goals, and the spender wants to enjoy the moment more today. And so you may have limited savings potential in a partnership like that. The next is educational, which is one that that society really acknowledges. Hey, you probably just need more education. You need more literacy training. You need to understand the concepts better. How do you invest? How much do you need to save? How do you budget and track your income and expenses? And that, those are all that can be very, well, you might need to get some education, but that's not the only thing, or sometimes even the most primary concern in solving a problem. The next is behavioral. And this is another one that society says, yeah, you probably either need to have the behavior of making more money or being more self-disciplined, starting a new habit, a financial habit of saving or investing or budgeting or something like that. And that again can be part of the equation, but it's often not the only one that's going to, really move the needle for you. The next is physiological, and this is just helping us understand that, if we're in a depleted state physically, we're probably not going to make very good financial decisions. This would have to do with sleep and diet and exercise. If we're in a state of illness or those kinds of things, to give a nod to how our bodies and our minds and our spirits are connected. And so, that's going to, an easy example would be, don't go to the grocery store hungry. You're going to make different financial decisions, probably poor ones, than if you, are out shopping in a state where, you feel full. You can, your mind can focus on making rational decisions because your body's taken care of. The next layer would be psychological. And this is the one that most people aren't acknowledging, but this is where so much of our financial decision-making is actually occurring. It's the stories and the narratives that came out of our upbringing into our adult relationship with money that we haven't explored, that we haven't dissected, we haven't talked about them with our partners. What does money mean to me? What does it mean to have material wealth? What kinds of messages am I sending to myself and to others? Just exploring your whole belief system, the cultural values that you grew up with, making sure that you're in alignment with those values and those are the values that you want to live by. So that psychological layer, I think, is probably one of the most important and least understood that we need to kind of come out of our, when we're making a financial decision, if we can come out of the automatic process of like, just, I want this, and so I'm going to get it, and I'm really not going to explore what that means to me or why, then we can start to really make some progress on our finances and become more successful. And below that is something that is actually another layer that's pretty pervasive. It's the neurological layer. This is, subatomic, what's happening inside of our nervous system. So we might have an actual nervous system activation or a trigger as we're trying to, let's say we think that, okay, we need to establish a budgeting habit. But if we have a nervous system response, if our nervous system is activated as we sit down to look at our bills or to track our income and expenses, then we're not going to be able to implement that new habit. It's impossible. Our body is literally saying, this is not safe. This is a dangerous activity. It might actually feel totally threatened with annihilation. That's what the triggers and those nervous system activation, that's what's doing. The fight or flight mechanism in our brain is saying something is wrong here. And that needs to be explored, uncovered, and dealt with through trauma treatments. So it might be therapeutic measures, mindfulness and meditation have been shown by research to actually shrink the amygdala, which is the place where these responses occur in your brain. And so it's actually like medicinal to implement a meditation practice and to start to train your brain to be in a state of calm so that when you get to activation, your brain goes, wait a minute, we know how to come out of this. We know how to get into a place of stillness, and then we can bring our decision-making, thinking part of our brain back online, which is the prefrontal cortex. We want to be making decisions in that space rather than in the emotionally driven, reactive space, which is, what a lot of people end up doing. And then if let's say you're having a nervous system response as you're trying to implement a new habit, well, you might think, oh, shoot, I guess I'm really bad at money. I can't seem to implement this new habit. I can't seem to get good at budgeting. But so that's actually telling you and affecting your ability to believe that you can be successful when really that has nothing to do with it. You are capable of establishing a new habit, but not until you deal with that trauma response.
But I really appreciate how you break it down, Jennifer. It's easy to focus only on the surface level financial habits, but the way you highlight all the 7 really shows that how much unseen forces shape our decisions. And recognizing these influences can completely change how we approach money. And that's such a fascinating insight. Now, building on that, how can someone, begin to recognize these hidden influences in their own financial decisions?
Well, I would say to go back and look, stop the recording, go back and write them all down: societal, relational, educational, behavioral, physiological, psychological, and neurological. And then again, let your higher self kind of guide you into circling the ones that you think are at play in the financial problem that you're trying to face, whether it's, I'm not saving enough, I overspend, I can't spend any money. That's another problem. Sometimes we have people who are like, it just pains me to spend any money. That would be definitely in the neurological and the psychological side. Maybe it's even affecting your ability to be happy with your family because you can't go and spend money on experiences or on things. And so that's relational is in there. And then really I like to then just right next to it, what are the factors in that layer that are affecting my ability to be successful with money or to overcome this financial hang-up. So in societal, it might be like, well, if I'm a woman of color and I have an income problem in the United States, I've got to acknowledge that the system is not set up for me to succeed. It is set up for certain people to be advantaged and other people and groups to be disadvantaged. And so when we recognize that, we can say, not all of this is my fault, even though it could be, it's still my responsibility to change it. It's still my responsibility, my finances. It doesn't do me any good to just sit here and be angry about it. But when I say, okay, this means I'm going to have to maybe work extra harder than some of my Caucasian counterparts or some of the workers in my colleagues at work might go up for promotions and I might not get them. And it might have something to do with this. So I might have to modify my approach in light of these societal factors that are affecting my ability to be successful with money. Another one on societal is how banks lend money and how credit card works and all of the millions of dollars that is poured into the consumerism products of the United States, the messaging that we get that to solve any of your problems, you don't feel good about something, consume, go buy something. Spend your money on something and it's going to keep you from feeling that, loneliness or, rejection or abandonment or fear that consumption is going to solve all that. Those are societal messages that are making it very difficult for all of us to succeed with money. So just write down next to it. Again, let your higher self guide you. It will, those first words that come to mind, don't judge them. Don't say, oh no, that probably isn't it. Or that's probably not what she meant by this. No, you write it down because those are the things that are affecting you. And then go through there. And after you've listed all of the different factors that are involved, then I want you to pick one layer. Usually it's the lowest layer. So if it's neurological, you have to deal with that before you can deal with any of the other things. Or if it's psychological, and for most people it is, let me explore my beliefs. Let me examine my values. Let me see, what are these unconscious narratives that are driving my financial decisions? Bring them to the forefront. You can go online. My website, lots of websites have what are called a belief inventory, a money belief inventory. Write those things down. Start to say, what were some of the things that I thought about money and nobody's ever asked me, like, is this, to help me understand whether or not this is actually a truism or is it just something that I came up with? And then start to work on that. Start to say, okay, you can even do, I love how AI is helping us. You could create a financial coach project inside of ChatGPT and say, hey, I think I might be making this decision emotionally. Help me talk through this and give it as much context as you can. And it can start to give you feedback. Oh yeah, in light of what was going on in your family of origin, it sounds like you're spending this money to prove to yourself that you have value to this certain class of people or something like that. That's just an example. And then kind of work your way up. Once you feel like you have a handle on the bottom level, then maybe you can okay, yeah, I do need a few physiological things. Continue to work on your sleep, diet, and exercise, the big three. And then you can start to say, I think I'm ready to tackle some of this behavioral stuff or start to learn some new concepts. I'm ready to implement new habits and new patterns.
Mm-hmm. I really like how you make the concept of hidden influences so relatable, Jennifer. It shows that, with a bit of awareness, people can start to understand the deeper factors shaping their financial decisions. And it's empowering to realize that recognizing these patterns is the first step toward making choices that truly align with their values. And that's such a thoughtful and practical explanation, Jennifer.
Well, you can't solve a problem that you haven't yet identified, right? If you haven't identified it, there's no way to face it. So bringing that all to the forefront. And then I would always say, as you're working on your financial hangups, whatever those problems are, to always try to be in a state of calm. So to bring yourself into self energy. You might call it your spirit guide. You might call it your higher wisdom. We know that there's more to us than just the physical part that we can see and touch and hear. That there's this inner intuition. The universe is helping us to understand the best path forward for us. And when you're dealing with finances, it's really important because it's so tied to our identity. It's so tied to how we feel about ourselves, to make sure that that part of ourselves is what is guiding us. So do some centering, do some breathing, do some grounding, and make sure that, like, if you're going to sit down and try to figure out, where you want to invest your retirement, for instance, your retirement funds, that you're not doing that right now, and maybe you're about to have a meeting with a financial planner. Get centered, and if somebody activates you, then have the peace of mind and say, hey, you know what? I have learned about financial wellness techniques, and I know that right now I'm just going to need a few minutes to bring myself out of activation, because these triggers can just come out of nowhere, because again, they're buried in our subconscious. They're not something that we get to choose when and where they happen. So to be able to say, I need to take a break from this, I'm going to go back and I'm going to get back into that self-energy, back into that state of calm, curiosity, where you can access your inner courage, where you can connect with other people. You can be, this is where we can think clearly. We have presence of mind to do things. So I'd really encourage people not to do reacting in money. That's usually going to make more problems than it solves, but to do acting, where we're choosing exactly how we want to behave and what we want to do in that moment.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. And that's surely going to be beneficial for all our listeners out there. Now, looking ahead, what simple mindfulness practice can anyone adopt today to feel more confident and calm with money?
So a really great practice is to take something in your life that's financial that you aren't doing now, that you feel like you need to do, and to do a mindful meditation visualization practice with it. So instead of actually trying to do it, let's say it's, every day you come home from work and you grab food on the way home, instead of meal planning, instead of, even if you want to just come home and make something simple like eggs with pancakes or something, you feel like, oh man, I've worked hard all day long and I just want to have this meal. And that's a habit that's impacting your ability. Like if you add up all of those meals over time and you invested that instead and just, went home and had regular food that you made with groceries, even if it's just like a frozen meal that you heat up somehow, you're going to save a ton of money over time, and that money could grow and lead to, greater financial independence in the future. Instead of worrying about trying to actually do the thing, go into a meditative state, which is usually to center yourself with your breath, which is where the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system, they intersect. So you can bring your body into that point of embodiment. And then instead of trying to do it, just visualize yourself doing it. Visualize yourself coming home, going straight from work home, and bypassing, put all of your favorite restaurants in this visualization. I passed up my favorite burger place. I passed up my favorite chicken joint. I passed up my favorite seafood place, and driving past them. So you're in that imagination. That's another place where we can access our full self, is in that playful, imaginative space. And maybe even, you're driving past them and you're waving at them and you're saying, hey, I'm not going to let you derail my financial plans. And you just do the visualization. Maybe you're doing that for 10 days before you even try to stop doing that, where you're going home and picking up food on the way home. Another way that you could use this visualization technique is to envision having a difficult financial conversation. This is one of the services that we offer, is preparing people for a conversation that they know they need to have, either setting a financial boundary down, or maybe they need to confront somebody that they suspect of financial infidelity, or they themselves have been keeping secrets that they want to unburden. There's just lots of conversations. It could be that you have lots of monetary resources and you want to sit down with your future heirs and talk about the finances, the inheritance that they're going to get, and you're scared to do that. You're scared of the judgment. So visualize that conversation taking place. Visualize it being in a safe place. People react well. You're able to say what you need to say. You could even, visualize if somebody pushes back a little bit and you have the courage to stand your ground. Like, really, this is what I'm going to do. It's not really, I'm not asking for permission. I'm just letting you know, because I love you, that I'm going to, whatever the boundary is. Maybe it's, I'm not going to be able to pay your phone bill past the end of the year. So you have 3 months to figure out how you're going to pay your phone bill. Or maybe an adult child is living with you and you want to have them start to pay rent. So you just can go into that visualization and make it happen then. And then you'll start to be prepared. You'll get that confidence. It's safe because, you're not actually saying it to somebody, but you're in that preparatory state.
I really admire how you didn't just name the technique, but also walked us through exactly how to do it. And it makes the whole idea of mindfulness and visualization feel tangible and doable. And I love how visualization can turn something abstract, even into a real actionable practice that anyone can start today. And that's really a clear and practical explanation, Jennifer.
Yeah, I really hope that people will do it. I've seen it transform people when they're like, okay, the worst that I could imagine, even if that happens, I still feel confident that this is the right decision for me. Because I know when I'm in that visualization, I'm not anxious. I'm not, this is my higher self leading me to these decisions and to what this process ought to look like. And so even if the person gets angry and they cut me off, I still know that I'm going to feel more regret not doing it than doing it. And I'm just using that one that's relational, because that's usually the hardest kind. It's not usually the other kinds, but it's when another person is involved that it can be very difficult to make those financial decisions and have those conversations that are really important for our success.
That's a beautiful reminder again, Jennifer. So Jennifer, you taught us that money is more than math. Obviously, it's a reflection of our beliefs, emotions, and choices. So by bringing mindfulness to our finances, we move from stress to clarity, from conflict to confidence. So listeners, start today. Observe your patterns and reclaim peace in your financial life, because empowerment begins with awareness.